All right, we're back here on the Gill Connections podcast. Super excited to bring you another superstar, man. I've had this week's guest on my list for a while because I like leaders. I first met today's guest doing some work with the Texas Track and Field Coaches Association, and really was just impressed from the get-go. And so she's been on the list, and we only get 52 a year, so you got to kind of work your way up the list as we move along. And so I'm super excited. So let's hop into it. Help me welcome the head coach for Waxahachie High School in the great state of Texas, the wise, the wonderful Miss June Villers. June, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on here, Mike. I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. Did I pronounce everything right? There's some names out there, Waxahachie. I never know how to pronounce things. Did I get it right?
You got it all correct. It's all good.
Perfect.
Did great.
And I love mascots, and I actually don't know Waxahachie's mascot. I'm going to guess, and then you're going to correct me. I would think it'd be something, for some reason I have like either mule riders or like Oilers or something, two totally different guesses there. What is it actually?
Not quite. We're the Indians.
Indians. All right. I could have gone like Tiger. I think that's the most common mascot in high school is Tigers. I would have had a good percentage there, but the Waxahachie Indians, love it. And this may be controversial. You still have that as a mascot, meaning, there's been a lot of changes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very prideful here. Yes, we do. We're actually opening a new high school in a few years, and that was a big to do about what their mascot would be. So there might be some looks at that in the future, but our new high school is going to be the Buffaloes. So that's how we do it here.
And I'm assuming Waxahachie, this may be a bad assumption, is the name of an Indian tribe.
Well, there's a lot of debate on that, but okay. Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
My understanding is it's a combination of two different Indian words put together. So, meaning cool. Basically creek, and so.
Oh, yep. That's cool. All right, good. I was waiting for you to say Indian word for like buffalo. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's going to make sense for the new high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Love it. Cool. Just keeping it simple here, right? We have no idea why we're named things, but we just move forward. I like it. I love it. All right, Miss June, like I mentioned there in the brief quick intro, I met you, I think I officially met you at USTF CCCA one year as I was going in to do some hosting and emceeing for the TTFCA later on that January, and then got to work with you as we introduced different speakers that we have there at the TTFCA, Texas Track and Field Coaches Association meeting. And, it struck me during that time, there's different types of leadership out there. Some is very easy to see, others are not. That's not a judgment on whether it's a good or bad leadership. It's leadership is good. With you, it was evident, like there was just something about your presence. It was like, oh, like this is a head coach, this is a team. Like there was just something like, oh man, this is a leader here. And so you immediately went on my list. And so I was super excited to, work through the guest and everything to have you on here. So I'm super excited just to learn about your journey in this great sport, the things that you've contributed, the different leadership positions that you have held and do hold, and maybe even get a peek at like, well, what's the future look like for you as you continue through your career here. So I'm excited for today and just to kind of learn from you here today.
Great. Appreciate that.
Well, June, somewhere, knowing that you're a track coach, somewhere track had to start for you. Where does track start? Assuming you were an athlete, does track and field start as an athlete? Talk to us about the beginning for track and field.
So when I was a kid, we moved around a lot, and I actually probably lived in about 7 or 8 different places in Texas, and then moved out to California for a couple of years, and then got back here when I was a 7th grader, and I landed in DeSoto. And so that's where I started my track career. My 7th grade year, I actually was just in PE because the schools I had been in didn't have athletics. So I kind of didn't really know any better. And then my 8th grade year, both my 7th and my 8th grade year, I had a wonderful PE teacher. Her name was Pam DeBoard. And she ended up being the assistant athletic director at DeSoto, and ended up being the athletic director at DeSoto. And at that time, of course, I didn't know that then, but she saw something special in me. She took time. I was very shy, probably very introverted. We had a field day at the end of 7th grade, and she just saw some great things in me and took me on. And that's when I started my journey in cross country and track. So otherwise, if it weren't for her, we always have those special people in our lives that get us started. And Pam DeBoard was definitely that for me.
Y-
She's well known in the Dallas Fort Worth area.
I have said this many times, and I'll shout it from the mountaintops. A track coach, and I'm sure it's other sport coaches as well, but certainly for a track coach's true superpower is the ability to see something in others before they can see it in themselves. You didn't seventh, eighth grade go, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a track star, and go that route. You're just like, you talked about being introverted and shy. You were like, yeah, I don't even want the line. I don't even know what I can be. Maybe I don't even think I can be anything. But Pam DeBoard, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing.
Yes.
Pam DeBoard saw you and said, "Oh wait, no, there's something in this child, and I'm going to help pull it out." That's so awesome. I love that. Thank goodness for Pam DeBoard.
Yeah, she's still wonderful. I still talk to her, and she still looks out for me, and she's a wonderful person.
Oh,
And it was really my journey at DeSoto was all about having mentors. Once I got into high school, I started running for Coach Jones, Brent Jones, and he, in the long run, was there for 31 years at DeSoto. Um, Started to build that program and create the powerhouse that it became. And so when I got to high school, he was very influential. He made sure he kept his thumb on me and made sure I was doing the things I needed to do, keeping my grades up. And he's the one that went out and found me a place to run. I ran at Wayland Baptist University.
oh wow.
So I ran up there, and he was the one that worked that all out for me. Otherwise, I would have had a hard time paying for college and getting there, and he helped take care of all that for me. So
When you look back at it now, obviously track has been a major part of your life through high school and college, and we'll learn more about that here in a second. Typically, track kids are the most athletic as well. What, and maybe you did play other sports, but the question is, why track in regards to maybe other sports? And did you play other sports? Like, what was the attraction for track versus other sports?
I played soccer all growing up. I played middle back, and so I was used to running all over the field, and probably the speed was my strong point in soccer. And I played up through my freshman year of high school, and then at that point was when I really got interested in track and wanting to excel there. And so that I kind of finished my soccer career in high school and but pursued the cross country and the track there. I'm probably a little bit better coach than I was athlete,
Mhm.
but like I said, I had great mentors looking out for me and keeping me centered. So it was good.
Yeah, that line you just said there, I'm probably a better coach than I was athlete. Thank God for that, because that's probably the majority of us. There's only a few slots to be really, really good, right? So, what is it? Those who can't teach, I used to tell people, that statement, those who can't teach. I was like, well, I was a really good teacher, because what that means is, as I really could not do it at all. So,
Right.
I love that. I love that. All right. So, as you are going through high school, Coach Jones pouring into you, Coach DeBond is always there for you as well. You start thinking about college. What was the thought? So you already told us we went to Wayland Baptist. What was the thought for career? Like, what did you go into major in? Was track coaching at all in your mind at this point, or what were you thinking professionally?
It was not. I actually started off pursuing a mechanical engineering
Oh, wow.
degree. I was pretty good at math and pretty good at physics and enjoyed doing those things. Um, But in the end, when I got into college, those classes get pretty tough. And once I was into college, I didn't have the same mentors that I guess I had probably in middle school and high school.
Mhm.
And so it was easy to kind of lose your way a little bit. And I think most of us can say we all had one rough semester.
Mhm.
And so after leaving that semester, I knew I had to like step back and really think about what I really wanted to do, where my passion was. And I actually talked to Coach Jones, and he never mentioned coaching or teaching because I think most teachers don't.
Mhm.
They're like, if you have math and science skills, then you need to pursue those and make the money that goes along with those. But I figured out that that's what I want to do. I changed my major and I never looked back. So I did
Wow.
eventually become a math teacher, but I changed my path probably my junior year, and then everything became very different.
A lot of times our majors are picked based off of either someone we met that had that kind of job or our parents or someone in the family. You initially went mechanical engineering, which is super interesting because my first major was computer engineering. My brother-in-law is a double electrical engineering. So, that's, and I would 100% agree with you again, as a former computer engineering major. Holy cow. It sounds cool and it looks cool and it probably is cool, but man, those classes get, I give all hats off to people who got engineering degrees. Holy cow. Where was the initial motivation to become a mechanical engineer, become an engineer?
I always was very good at fixing things. If something broke in the house, I was the one kind of mess with it, tinkering with it, and putting it back together. I worked as a bike mechanic in high school and in college.
Wow.
Actually, ended up later co-owning a bicycle shop. So I always was pretty good with my hands. So that's kind of, I thought that would be a good path for me. And maybe if, what adults don't tell kids is it's okay to fail. You just got to pick yourself back up and go again. So I think a lot of people, when they have that rough semester, that's what they need to hear. And I think if I'd had that, I might have continued. But I think my passion is so when I'm out on that track, that's when I'm the happiest I can be, outside of being with my own children and my husband. But I think I chose the right career. But I do know that I guess that's my biggest thing when my kids graduate, my track girls graduate. I just tell them, make sure they understand you're going to have some bad times. You just got to reach out to people that are going to get you out of that. So
You're being the mentor and voice to them today that I don't ever want to look back and think about regrets and things like that, because I'm so thankful you did have that rough semester and went into teaching, because you wouldn't be on this podcast, June, if you were a mechanical engineer. Trust me. So
right.
glad you had that. But if you'd have had someone in your ear going, "Hey, yeah, I know you just had a tough semester. Boy, so did I when I was doing engineering school or whatever." You just got to kind of stick to it. It'll come back. It's all right. And I think kids, and I do. It's interesting you talk about that, and you see it every day. I've got a 13-year-old and 10-year-old, so I've got a 13-year-old getting ready to another year of middle school and then high school. But I think about, like, these kids, and we were too. So I'm not putting it as like today's generation versus our generation, but they're under a lot of things. When you were 18 years old, you're under a lot of things, just a lot of different stress and pressures and motivations and demotivators. It is tough to be a kid. I still would trade in a heartbeat with any 18-year. I'd go back to college or high school in a heartbeat, but they do have their own. I think sometimes as adults, because of the different stressors and pressures we have, we got to pay the bills, we got jobs, we have relationships, etc. We have health, with our families. I think sometimes because of those stressors, we think, oh man, you ain't got nothing wrong as a 16-year-old, 18-year-old, 20, whatever. Wait till you get to the real world. And it's like, no, they are in their own real world, and they need mentors along the way that can help show them that it's not the end of the world and that they can fail. I love that you said that, because I think that's 100% correct, and that none of this is fatal mistakes. We can all pick up
Right.
and move on and become teachers or whatever ends up coming through the pipeline. I love that. So you ran track all 4, maybe 5 years through Wayland?
I did not.
Okay.
My track career was short lived. I ran for Wayland just my freshman year,
Okay.
and then I ended up due to family reasons I had to go back home, and I started going to school at UTA.
Okay.
I attempted to start running at UTA, but it didn't work out. I was having to work in it and school and everything, so
Mhm.
I had other responsibilities I had to pursue.
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot of sense. I actually appreciate your openness and authenticity there. I think sometimes we take it for granted, because we do see so many kids that go on to run college track. It's the number one most participated sport both in high school and college when we had boys and girls, men and women together. And when we're in the coaching world, I think we take it for granted because we see a lot of kids that go and run 4 or 5 years and graduate and think like, oh, that's everybody does that. I got a lot of respect for kids who do that, and the academic, like, it's tough. Again, and all the family and financial and everything else that goes on with it. I think it's harder than we think, and it's easy for us to just assume that everybody does. I appreciate hearing that.
oh yeah.
So you end up with a math education degree. What did we end up getting the degree in?
So I ended up having a math and kinesiology degree,
Okay.
and graduated, and then started actually at Sal Grand Prairie working with Sharon Bruner. I don't know if you know who Sharon Bruner is, but she's kind of a legend around here too. So I was very lucky there with that mentor. I've just been very, very lucky over the years. Got to work with her for a semester as my student coaching and teaching, and helped work with the cross country team there. And so that was quite a great experience for me working with her. And when I left there with finishing my student coaching and teaching, they actually offered me the swim job. There weren't any track positions open. Of course, I wanted a
Wait.
track position.
I haven't heard any swimming in this story yet, unless we just somehow
I
skipped
know,
it.
I know. Yeah. So no. So I never did, and um, I just wonder sometimes where I'd be if I'd accepted that first position,
Sure.
But I went on to. I said no, I'm looking for track. So then I went on to my student teaching at Red Oak, and I was at Red Oak for a semester.
What did you think? I don't know. I see it, again, we're in the track world, so maybe I just see it commonly because in the track world, I see a lot of times where a parent or a new teacher who has no track experience gets asked to help out with the track team. And I don't know. I just think it's just commonplace, and we have to coach a coach. I don't hear it in other sports. What did you think when they're like, "Hey, we'd love to," and you can coach, and you're like, "Oh yeah, track," and they go swimming, and you're like, "Wait a minute, what
Well,
did
it
you
was really
think?"
something to contemplate because the training, I'm sure, is, and I was a decent swimmer. I had
Hmm.
grown up swimming a lot and knew all the different strokes and everything. It was certainly something I thought I could probably do. And a lot of the training concepts are very, very similar as
I would
long as you can
assume.
teach the strokes and all
Right.
that. Similar training concepts,
Yeah.
but I said no. I knew what I wanted to do, and so I just continued to try to pursue that.
That's so funny. We're in the midst of, I think, the swimming Olympic trials are going on right now too. So there's got to be similarities, right? Like I've never actually talked to a swim coach because I've never, I was at one school, Ball State, that we had swimming, and they were very much, and I feel like this is common for swimming, but I think people would say this about track too. It was very much like 100-meter swimmers did like miles and I mean, it was just,
Mhm.
and I was just like, oh my, like my track background was like, this can't be right. Like the 100-meter swimmer, I know they're not going to do the same things we do for 100-meter sprinters, but there's got to be correlation of like speed training, not, just get conditioned for. I don't know. It is.
I think it's that whole you have to hold your breath thing. I think you have to be a little more aerobic than a track person.
Yeah. Yes. Not disagreeing with that. Yeah. Although I did learn when I was at Ball State, I started dating an assistant coach there, so I had to go to swim meets. Uh, I know a lot of people complain about track meets. Man, swim meets. I'll leave it at that. If you haven't been to a swim meet, I know it looks really cool on TV with Olympic trials right now. Go to your average high school or college swim meet. It's tough. It's loud. It's humid. It's a long. It really
Yes.
is. So, yeah, we didn't make, me and the girlfriend didn't make it very long. All right. So you're at Red Oak High School. This is your first, I don't want to call it real, but this is your first coaching experience now, right?
Well, it's my first job.
Right.
So I graduated in December,
Okay.
and they had a math position come open, and so I took on the Red Oak position, and I went and I volunteered coached track and field at Red Oak,
Okay.
which is funny because one of my assistants I've had with me, one of my coaches that she's been with me like 20 years. She was actually a student. I didn't, yeah. So I didn't work
Ah,
with her because she was a hurdler, and at the
ah,
time I didn't work with the hurdlers. But that's kind of our connection over the years.
yeah.
I ended up working with her later, but um, so I started there and took on that volunteer. I think it's really important for coaches if they want to know for sure that this is what I'm going to pursue, they need to go volunteer coach.
I agree.
They really do. They need to
Yeah.
understand the hours. They need to make sure that it's willing because the whole job is going above and beyond
Mm.
most of the time of your expectations if you're going to be successful. So if you're not willing to go volunteer, then you're probably not above and beyond person. And if you want to be successful in this career path, then you're going to need to be that person.
I have a lot of agreements and then a little bit of disagreements there, but I do agree. Like I like the idea. Like I think more like in the college side, the graduate assistant positions, it's just assumed if you become a graduate assistant that you're going to go on to be a track coach. And I think it needs to be more of like, hey, that's your internship. And you know what? At the end of that year or 2 years or whatever, if you do decide to go into coaching, great. You just had a great 2 year experience and you saw what the quote unquote real world of coaching is. And if not, awesome. You got a great grad degree on top of your undergrad. Go do whatever that's going to, teacher, whatever you're going to be there. The reason I say I have a little bit of disagreements is I don't like, and this is more of a college thing, to be real frank with you. I don't like the world of volunteer. I think here's what it boils down to. I think coaches should be paid more. I guess you'll agree with me on that one, June.
Mm-hmm.
I think coaches should be paid more. And so I don't like the suppression of salaries, of wages, we just bring on a volunteer coach. We don't need to pay for another position on staff. Just go get a volunteer coach. I don't like that. That's the part I don't like. But on the high school side, it not even a little different. It is different. We're talking about a different type of coaching staff out there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Like college, they're so very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Yeah, I think a lot of times volunteer coaches are expected to do a lot more than they need to at the college level.
Yeah.
At the high school level, I think it shows that you're motivated to do those things. You're motivated to learn more than, because a lot of people think I was a great athlete. I did college track. I did these events. I know everything. You really need to show those upper level coaches at the high school level that you're willing to go and learn the way they do things and their philosophy, and not just track, any sport.
Right.
So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, on the high school side, when we're talking about, a teacher volunteering, or coaching, even, we forget. And, I'm getting a better sense of it because my wife has started substitute teaching. So she's not a teacher, but she substitute and she does long-term subs. And so she did like algebra last semester. I think she's doing geometry this next semester. And I've heard the stories, but I guess until, and shame on me, it has to wait until my wife works for me to get this. But I now have the experience. I see, the grading of papers and stuff. And I started thinking, it's like, well, she ain't coaching even. Like there's people, that she works with that at 3 o'clock, she comes home and grades. They go to practice and then still have to grade. It's just amazing the amount of workload. And then these selfless people like yourself that now also spend hours a day at practice, not even counting weekends for meets and things like that. It's coaching track and field, even on the high school side, could be a full-time position, and you're doing it on top of your actual full-time position of teaching. Okay, so you're at Red Oak. You do the semester of volunteering. So now you're coaching. I'm always fascinated, being an athlete, regardless of the skill level, whether you are an All-American or you're just happy to be on the team, it's different being an athlete than coaching. You go from everything coach tells me, I internalize, how do I do it to make myself better, to okay, now I have these eager little 13, 14, 15-year-old kids and their eyes just staring at me. What do I do with them? What was your experience? Talk about that first experience of coaching, of actually, I'm gonna call it barking out orders, but putting them through their paces. How did that feel? What did you struggle with? Talk to us about that initial experience.
well, my first coaching position was at Palmer. It's a little 2A school, not too actually far south of Waxahachie here. And I was cross country and middle school basketball, which I had never even dribbled a ball before, ever. But that's what you do when you're at small schools. And then I was the head track coach also. But so my very first experience was into coaching was you're going to go get your CDL. So
Mm.
they don't talk about stuff like that, but we had to drive the bus. So I've got to go get a CDL. So there was I went back and went to coaching school that summer. So it was a very busy summer trying to get ready to be a coach even. I had a great then mentor, became friend. She was the girls coordinator at Palmer. And she kind of led me through it. She was a basketball coach, and she's the one that talked me into helping her with the basketball team. And I would say her name was Emmy Ellis. She was very influential in teaching me time management.
Mm.
In that if you only need this much time, and if you can't get it done in that much time, then it probably wasn't worth doing. And so I even just going to her basketball practice, I was like, okay, we need to make sure we're using every second of our time in a
Oh,
positive way. And so that actually is very helpful to me, that you need to do just a few things and build on those each day. And so she was very important to me too. I was there for 4 years, and we became very close friends. And it seems strange that you would learn probably more from a basketball coach than anybody else in track, because I was willing to go and, you know, buy the videos. Back then, you had to buy the videos, right? You spent a lot of money. Now you can download, which is wonderful for all these new coaches. But I probably learned as much or more from her as anybody that I worked with at the very beginning.
yeah. Talk to us about that a little bit more. That's interesting topic. You know, when you talk about time management, you know, specifically we're talking about track coaching, but again, because you're teaching, there's other things, and you know, maybe hopefully you have a personal life and friends and relationships, etc. And you know, for track. I don't know if this is for other sports, but I know in track there's like we have kind of this like sadistic thought process sometimes of like, you know, we brag about the 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour practices, 7 days a week, things like that. And maybe that's available, you know, based on NCAA rules for NCAA, but for high school, we are still talking about 14 to 18-year-old kids. You learned this with basketball. Talk to us more about like, so how did you transfer what you were learning from her on basketball to track? I'm assuming this is a whole big assumption that kind of traditional of like long practice type things is what you went through. Cause again, that's kind of again, that's an assumption. It's a big swath. How did you start looking at practices different now that you were the coach and you were learning from her?
So as girls coordinator and the basketball coach, she was really good about each week sending out exactly what the team was going to be doing and where she needed each coach to be during what they were doing.
For
And
basketball?
so, yes,
Oh,
yes.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, just like, we're okay, we're going to start with transition drill, fundamentals, just there was no doubt what you were doing as the practice went on. And so I learned that skill from her. And so every week now, Sunday night or Monday morning, depending on when I can get it out, but I send that to all of our track coaches here on campus, and then I also send it to all our middle school coaches.
Hmm.
And it's very detailed. It'll have all the drills we're going to do and for which particular event, and all of those things. So I learned that from her. I don't know that if I had seen that in action, if I would be as good at
Right.
that now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. June, specifically for you, because I know of your interaction with TTFCA and stuff. You know, I go to a lot of different clinics around the country, right? Obviously, Texas, Wisconsin, Ohio, etc. And it's interesting in the last 10 years, a little bit of a shift in the different topics that are spoken on. 10 years plus ago, 99% of the topics would be, how to coach distance runners better, how to, go from glide to rotational and shot. It was all technique based, majority of stuff. Now we're seeing in the past 10 years, a shift to, some topics on, culture of a track team. Even at USTFCA on the college side, they'll have sessions on contract negotiations, things like, things that are still part of very much of the coach profession, just not always coaching. That kind of topic, like I see that kind of topic of like time, like, hey, here's something that I do and it's been successful. Like that'd be an interesting topic, I think, at clinic. And I don't know, and maybe you're going to tell me you already presented on that. I don't know, but that's just interesting. Like, how do we help the profession of coaches and coaching and what you just described there? Do you send that out to the athletes too, or just to the different coaches?
I actually send that out just to the coaches.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are dead set on, they'll have the week there of the workout that they're going to do the rest of the week, posted in the locker room. I've actually never really done that. The kids kind of know, though, it's Monday. We're going to
Yeah.
probably do one of three workouts, right?
Right.
So they have an idea what's coming, but I haven't really posted that for the kids per
Yeah.
se. And I know a lot that works for a lot of people, but it's not. We have to adjust so much because of weather
Sure.
and just different testing and different situations. So I don't really like to put that out there. So,
Yeah.
because if I need to make a last minute change, I don't want it look like I'm not sure about what we're doing.
Yeah, there's pros and cons, and it looks like, well, you said this. You know how a 16-year-old can be. Trust me. Yeah, we all know that. Okay, that's interesting. So you learned that from a basketball coach. I love that, actually, because I know the influence track coaches have had in other sports. So I do love seeing that other sports coaches influence us as well. I love that. So you were there at Palmer for, you said several years.
I was there for 4 years.
4 years, yeah. So
Mhm.
how did you think back to those 4 years? What was the growth that you had? You went in as a very rookie coach. After 4 years, you certainly don't know it all at that point, but you certainly start having a much better idea of how to run practices, coaching education. You talked about with buying videos, which I can't believe of course I believe we used to do that, but it's so much easier today. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think having to work in that small situation, so in track and field specifically, well, cross country, there were 2 years where I was the only coach.
Mm,
So I had 7th grade through senior
wow.
kids on the same bus. You have 7th grade boys and senior girls on the same bus. It gets quite interesting. So, you deal with all those social aspects that you don't really think about. But, you have a lot of fun with that. And then during track and field, I had usually just one assistant. And so
Wow.
kind of the hardship and the beauty of it was though that I had to learn all the different events.
Mm,
There's probably just 3 events that I feel like I could really use some more work on. The throws, of course, because it's hard to get out there when you need to be with the rest of the team. And then of course pole vault. It's so
mhm,
technical.
mhm,
Um, but outside of that, I had to learn all the different events. And I feel pretty confident in most of those, that I can go out there and do those. So that was a good thing for me.
mhm,
It was very, very important that I felt like even though it was 2A, when you're at those smaller schools, track, it's funny depending on which school you go to that you barely have coaches going out there or they're all in.
mm,
It's very different depending on the school. So um, luckily, I had one assistant that was all in, and we worked very well together. But it was tough. I mean, I would have to get out there early with some kids and stay late with other kids just so you could make sure you could get in all the different techniques and or skills. And then the first year, we didn't have a track. We had to put all the kids on a bus to Ferris every day and drive back and
mm.
forth from Ferris 4 days a week. So
Wow.
yeah. I'm not sure I would do that now, but, I didn't know any better
I
then.
say, yeah, I was just about to say you didn't know any better, right? With two coaches, how many kids were you had on the team?
So we had initially, it was pretty kind of a small crew.
Right.
That very first year, we just had 2 girls make it to regionals, but by the time I left, we had a dozen make it, so in 4 years. So we probably had for varsity and JV, it's a little school, but we probably had about 23,
Yeah.
which was a lot of kids. It was most of the kids, it really was just the kids who played, softball that didn't run track
Mm,
because they were over, obviously on the softball field.
right.
So if they weren't doing softball, they were running. And we even had 2 or 3 that did do softball. So, because at that level, my best kids did 5 sports. So,
Five
um,
sports.
well, my best kids were cheerleaders and they did volleyball and they
Okay.
played basketball and they ran track. And my top 3, they played softball. So,
Wow.
yeah, they were busy kids.
I love. I think we should continue to promote multi-sport athletes. There's my local high school. I live in just outside of Champaign and Mahomet. They do a like when you go into their gym, they have I'm gonna call it a plaque, but they have a board that shows here are the 2 sport athletes, and they have their names in the school, and then they have a board. Here's our 3 sport athletes, and they have those less names, and then they have a couple of 4 sport athletes, and I was like, oh, what a way to sell like if I'm a student or an athlete in that school, and I look, I'm like, man, Johnny's on the 4 sport. I only play one. Shouldn't I try? And like, even if they just try it and they don't succeed, it gets them experience in other sports. I love that. 5 sports.
Yep,
That's
yep,
amazing.
yep. And you know what? I didn't even think about it. We had quite a few running cross country. So
Dude,
they did it
holy
all.
cow. That is
Yeah.
amazing. What an experience for that kid. Always involved, always having fun, trying different things. Obviously, it was probably maybe a better cross runner than a volleyball, but
Yeah.
maybe someone was a stud on all of them. Athletes are athletes. So that's really cool. I
Yeah.
love that. All right. So Palmer, what did you go to next, and why?
So after those 4 years, the North Mesquite, which is well, back then it was 5A, but it was big school, position came open. And I was trying, my sister was going to be moving back. And so I was like, I probably need to get a little closer to Dallas and all that. So I took that position at North Mesquite. And that was it was a good experience. It was very different from what I was used to. The big school level, which back then was 5A, now it's 6A. It's so much more competitive. And you have kids that they're only track kids, or maybe they do basketball and track, but you don't have those 4 and 5 sport kids anymore. So you have to kind of look at things differently and do things differently. I had to figure out how to up my off-season workouts, because we didn't have a lot of off-season kids where I was used to coming from. So you got to get creative there. So, but then at the end of that year, I got a phone call from my high school coach saying that Coach Malone was retiring, which was his main assistant the whole time I was at DeSoto. She was retiring, and he asked me if I would come and take coach with him and take her position. And I said, when I hang this phone up, I'll be at your door.
That's a
So,
no-brainer.
yeah, I could not get there fast enough to be able to work with
Oh.
him and work for my old high school.
So pin in that, because I do have a great, well, I think it's a great, I have a question off of that, but go back to, because when we're talking about on the college side, when someone says a position opened up, they're talking about, I'm a coach at this school and another coaching job opened up there. But as much as, you're on this podcast because you're a track coach. However, that's not primary. You are a teacher. That's the
Sure.
career. When you talk about when you're at Palmer and a position open up like at North Mesquite, are you saying a track coach position open up, and so you apply for it and you then have to figure out, well, is there a teaching position also? Or were you saying that there was a teaching position open up and I'll coach, whether it's a volunteer or assistant, or if they need a head? How does that work, call it professionally?
So I'd always only taught math, and I was the department head at Palmer. And so, not to sound cocky or anything, but if you're a math teacher, you can work anywhere you want.
Okay.
The math teaching position part was never an issue for me.
Yeah.
It was really about the coaching position.
Is that because there's less math teacher? I'm assuming there's less math teachers. Like whenever I see people like on Twitter and stuff, when they put out like, we need a coach, here's the open positions. It's rarely like English and PE, although sometimes it's math, science. It seems like those are maybe the less frequented teachers, but also that combo of them and they coach whatever sport, specifically track here.
Yeah, it's worse now than it used to be. It's very difficult to find math and science teachers.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. And actually I've been PE certified my whole career, because I was a math kinesiology major, and I had never taught PE. That was for track. And I'm only speaking from my own experience, but they don't hand out a lot of PE positions to track coaches.
Is
It's
that right?
unusual. Yeah, usually those are not track coaches. They're other positions. So, and that's experience I had anyway. So at least on the girls side, boys or men, if they're coaching football, then that can be, obviously that changes everything.
Yeah.
But so I never taught PE, only math all the way through.
So when you said a position open North Mesquite, that was a track coaching position, and
Yes.
and obviously there still had to be a math position for you, or that doesn't work out, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So then you go do math. Okay. And so same thing, DeSoto, the assistant job opens up from your old head coach, by the way. That's amazing. We're going to ask about that in a second. And so you go there and you teach math there as well and coach with the your former coach.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm hearing, maybe I missed it, all girls up to this point that you're coaching?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, that's not true. Cross country, I coach boys and girls.
Okay. All right. And at DeSoto, girls assistant coach?
I was the girls assistant coach and for track, and then the girls and boys assistant coach for cross country.
Is it culture in Texas that boys and girls staffs separate, or is it just happenstance where you're at?
I think certainly in track and field, the larger the school, they separate. But at Palmer, that was 2A, and we were separate.
Yeah, I
So
would have thought smaller school less separate just because of people. I
yeah, it
mean,
overlaps probably more. The smaller the
yeah.
school, the more it will overlap.
Okay, cool. All right. So now you get to DeSoto. Here's what I'm always interested in. So you become the assistant coach under your former head coach. So this is the person that used to bark out orders to you, and now you're his assistant coach. That's a different dynamic. How did, there's, I know for sure, my head coaches in high school were not very good coaches. I love them to death, but they were just not very good track coaches. But I still have a very much defer, whenever I see my old coach, it's like, oh, coach, how you doing?
Yes.
And now you've got, not that you're in the same, because you're assistant, but it's not athlete coach dynamic. It's now assistant coach. How did you, work to that transition? That is a transition.
Yeah, it was a transition for both of us. Because when I got there, his main assistant, she basically kept the ship. Uh, she doing the laundry, checking on everybody's grades, checking, make sure everybody's doing right in class, taking every time you could possibly imagine for every kid, all those type of organizational things. And then when I got there, um, I was the expectation was that we repacked bags for track meets every week. Well, we had about 60 plus girls. One year we had 88. So it just depended on the year, but the expectation was to pack and laundry 80 bags a week. And I just finally had to sit him down and thought, Coach, look, I love you, but I'm not here to do laundry. We got to figure something else out. So, and he was good with that, but like I was like, please, let me take the long jumpers, and he just kind of wasn't used to that. He was used to kind of coaching everything, and everyone kind of just helping him coach, kind of thing. And so he did it. So it was different for both of us because I was used to being the head coach and kind of calling the shots, and he was used to calling all the shots all the time. So he handed over the jumpers to me and allowed me to take them. And that was a great experience. And I think once he kind of just let go a little bit, we had a great time. It to this day, I still call him Coach Jones. I can't call him by his first name, right? That never changes.
Same.
And so I just learned so much from him as far as training techniques and again more of the organizational that I'd learned from the basketball. He just took it to another level with track and field. He was a Baylor coach, ran at Baylor, and so he used a lot of the Baylor techniques and all that. So I learned a ton from him, and we had a fantastic time. And the first year I was there, I was still relatively young, right? So I'm like, when I get there, I'm about 27, 28, I guess. And so the kids felt pretty comfortable around me, I guess, for the most part. Um, but it was funny, the very first year, he was very clear to make sure everyone knew he was still in charge. And I appreciated that, because it kind of helped put me remember why I'm here. I'm not the head coach. I'm not calling the shots. I am here to totally support everything he's doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was talking about the transition of you, to this was my head coach that told me, what to do and run and all that. To now I'm his assistant coach. I did not think about the other way. Coach Jones looks at you and goes, yeah, June, you're still the 16-year-old girl that didn't know how to tie her shoes when I was trying to get her to do a long run or whatever, like he also had to go through that transition. And sounds like he at least got to the point where, okay, this is not 16-year-old June. This is 27-year-old June. She's learned. She's a coach. I can trust her. Okay, go take the jumpers. That's a hard transition from him as well. I can see that. That's not just, to expect it just to be easy peasy and, we all work in harmony from the get-go. That's unexpected. So that's cool to see his transition as well. What are you doing? So you're taking over jumps. What are you doing with coaching education? I like to think of it as informal and formal. Informal, you kind of described a little bit of like, learning from him, things like that. That's called the informal. And by the way, both are important, formal and informal. Talking with peers, things like that. Formal is the, USATF level 1s, 2s, UST. Well, we didn't have USTFCA back then, I bet. It's coaching clinics, TTFCA, things like that. What were you doing coaching education, both informal and formal at this point?
Well, so I guess informal. I was buying the videos and
Hmm.
watching stuff all the time as much as I could. I was going to every clinic I possibly could get myself to, and if I could afford to go. Um, but I also did the USATF jump training. I
Yeah.
did the weight training certifications. So there were about I think probably three different USA certifications that I did that I learned a ton from. And that's probably where you know, one of my biggest mentors that anything I need, I can call him or text him and he'll help, is Vince Anderson.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
I know. So, I mean, when I got to DeSoto, we were starting to get pretty good. We were showing up the state track meet. We were there. We had kids, always, really strong throwers and hurdlers. Our relays were getting better, but our sprint relay and 4x2, we didn't have it. And then we got better and better, but we could never break 46. We could never break about 46.3. We just couldn't get under it. And then I went to see him speak up at SMU, and it changed my whole mindset on the two short relays. And after that, that's when we started to drop. And we would, if we didn't go under 46, it was not a good year. So that
What
kind of
was it?
changed everything for us.
I love Vince to death, and I love his speaking style. I'm sure it's very similar to his actual coaching style. He's the kind of guy. Every time I've went and listened to him speak, I'm like so motivated to go coach right then and there. I mean, it's just like, oh, all
Right.
right, let's go. Like I don't even coach anymore. I'm like, all right, let's go coach. He's just so his. It's the vernacular, it's the punctuation. I mean, it's just everything with Vince, the emotion. Knowing that we don't talk X's and O's, but I am curious if there's something you can describe when you talked about, we were struggling to even get past 46.3 and, listening to him and implementing his things. Now it was a bad year if we weren't in the 45 range. And maybe it is all X's and O's. Maybe you can just give us a quick overview, but what was it? What was the secret sauce that you got from him that changed the whole direction of the relays?
Well, we learned how to do our runouts, our takeoffs in a three-point stance instead of standing up. So we
Mhm.
started doing that. And then we also started doing his max velocity drills that
Mm.
just made a huge
Yep.
difference in, I
Yep.
think, our base speed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would encourage you, if you're listening, if you're ever at a clinic, I always say this about Bush Exnator, and Vince is right in
Yes.
that same philosophy for me, is if if Vince is at a clinic that you're at, uh, it doesn't matter who else is speaking. You go see Vince, and if you've seen Vince 10 times, cool, go make it an 11th time. You will always learn something. You'll be reminded of something. There's the thing I'm interested with, coaching education is there's today, especially, there's no lack thereof for coaching education. Like there's no excuse. If you want to learn more about coaching any event, there's opportunity, whether it's streaming now, YouTube, obviously clinics, things like that. But because of that, we can easily become inundated with all of these things, and a lot of good things, but we forget. You have to then go implement them. And so we forget, because a lot of times we do these clinics in, say, the fall, and well, we're not coaching until maybe March or April or May when that thing comes up. So you have to constantly be re-listening to those things. And you are in a different spot in different times of your career as well. So you'll hear the
Right.
same thing for the seventh time, and that's the time it clicks. So always go see Vince Anderson anytime he's anywhere. He's amazing. He does a lot of I love it. He is really, I tell you, love when a guy like that says, I'm going to stay involved in the sport and do clinics and coach. Like he is going. There are a legacy of coaches. You're one of them here. Legacy of coaches that have produced better athletes because he has selflessly held this clinic in Dallas, and then down in Houston, and then over in California. So I love that Vince is just going strong with the knowledge that he has from a lot of mentors into others now. So I love that. That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Talk to me about, Texas. I love Texas. I just got done back in April and May. I interviewed one coach, one person from every state to learn about their outdoor state meet and what makes it unique and how different it is, how different Texas is from Connecticut and California and everything. And so we had Stu, a guy you might know a little bit, Stu Canner, came on and did Texas for us and did a really good job of what could easily be a confusing situation for Texas. Not only just in the UIL, but when you start talking about taps and all that, yeah, he did a great job of, like, even I understood it. So he did a great job. Talk to us about DeSoto, talked about, your transition. So you're there as an assistant coach, talk about your time and how that transitioned to the athletes, how they got better, success you've had at state meet, things like that. Kind of give us an overview of how that time period at DeSoto went.
I think I really got to understand 400 training very well, working for Coach Jones. Many of the things that he did then, I still do now. I would say 60% of what I do was from what I learned from him. Then the other 40% came from, it's funny you should say that, Vince and Boo. So those are by far my, two biggest college coach mentors in
Pretty
the
good.
business. Um, but getting a chance to just take on that long and triple jump, I had to really I knew I was the coach. I'm responsible. How these kids do reflects on what I've been able to put into them and how quickly they learn and progress. So I became a real big advocate of progression drills. And so that's how we teach our kids. We teach it from the very bottom and just build on that as we go throughout the year, and not just the year, but as they're freshmen and sophomores and juniors, it builds and builds. And we try to remember that freshmen are not seniors. You have to modify for them if you really want them to progress. If you want them to progress, so they got to start at the bottom again. So you have to kind of really figure out a way to split things up and work things. My first probably most biggest success for me was triple jumper, Unique Hamilton. She was my first big trip to the state meet. She ended up placing second at that meet.
Wow.
I was 9 months pregnant at the same time.
Oh my.
So it was quite an event. Yeah. And so it was very special. She broke the school record at the state track meet. She placed second overall. We got to jump her up into the 40-foot mark. And so that was my first time that I was like, okay. And she didn't ever jump till she was a sophomore. And so that I felt very happy about that. And that's how I started to just kind of realize that you have to do that with every event. You've got to learn those progression drills for every single event. And that's how you're going to develop athletes, no matter what event it is. And so that was big time for me. And then I think her being able to do that showed Coach Jones and then the other people that I worked with that if and when Coach Jones did retire, that there would be that confidence that I could do the things that needed to be done.
And did that happen?
It did. So he was only going to stay 3 years. He said, I'm going to work about 2 or 3 more years. I'm going to retire and we're going to look at seeing hopefully, you being able to move into this position. But we were having so much fun together and he stayed 5 years and really he could have stayed longer. It would have been awesome. But he would move back to Arkansas and he said it was time to go. And so I moved at the time, Pam DeBoard, going back to 7th grade, 8th grade track. She was the athletic director. And so that's how I got the DeSoto position.
Hey, how cool is that for her? She, again, she looks at you and goes, man, I remember you as a 6th grader. And now she gets to promote you to the head coach of for her, to see your development. That's so cool, man. That's really neat. I know you've seen some similar at this point now in a career as well. That's really cool. That's cool just to see a kid grow up into an adult and then become an experienced adult. That's really awesome. I love that for her to be able to do that. So about 5 years as the assistant?
Yes, 5 years as assistant. And that very last year that I was hit with him, that was the first time we had won state. So that was just kind of
his last
icing on the
year.
cake. The
Oh,
5th year.
what a way to go out, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
So,
Okay. Well, hold on. I want to ask about that, but real quick, just to get context. So 5 years assistant, how many years as the head coach? When you took over,
I
yeah.
was at DeSoto 15 years as the head coach
15.
after the 5. So I was there 20.
Okay, perfect. So go back to that's really amazing that it was his last year. That's just, those are storybook things you can't plan on.
Mhm.
Winning is hard. I think we sometimes forget, or we take it for granted in track and field, that winning is hard. I think it's hard. It's easy for us to take it for granted because we go to track meets and there's 20 plus event, 20 for boys, 20 for girls, roughly. So there's always a winner. We go to a state meet in Texas. Now there's 6 classes, if I remember correctly. So there's 12 team championships. It's easy to just kind of take it for granted, but winning is hard. What was it like winning the first, I mean, the state championship? There's very few people that can say they've done that. What was that like? Take us through the meet, and like when did you realize you were going to win? Maybe it was it took all the way to the 404, which is exciting, but nerve wracking. Talk to us about that experience, because that is amazing.
So it was so very different from any other time. We hadn't won before, so we weren't watching the points. We were just kind of enjoying the meet. We had a hurdler,
So
or
you didn't
at
even
least I wasn't. Now we had a scorekeeper, our throw coach, Ben
okay.
Dotson. He was our scorekeeper at
So
every
you
meet.
kind of thought you had a shot, though. Like, you didn't go in thinking like, oh yeah, we're 5th or something, and end up winning.
We kind of thought maybe we could place in the top 3.
Oh wow. Okay. So it
Place in the
wasn't
top
like an
3. And
automatic, like
then
it's ours to lose.
I just got so wound up with just watching each event and the thrower going, all of those things that I wasn't asking what the points were.
Right,
And
right.
so, like, right when we had them line, because you're not there when you're warming up, you're not on the track.
Good point.
You're kind of displaced from, so you're just running back and forth. You're trying to see the event, and then you have to run back over to the warm up area.
Mhm.
So you're kind of displaced from the meet,
Good point.
honestly. Of all the meets that you really don't get to see, if you've got very many events running, is the state track meet,
Right.
because
Good
you
point.
have to be over making sure the kids are focused and all that. But um, we really didn't realize that we had a shot at it till right before the 4x4 was going to start. And so we had to be, the whole thing. We had to be first or second, and another team had to be third, and another team had to be fifth. And anyhow, we broke the school record. That I remember, if there's one thing I can always remember, it's mile relay times. So we ran like a 3:44, which is by far the fastest we'd ever thought about running. And the kids just, they knew they had, we let them know right before they took off what they had to do, and they did it. So it was pretty exciting.
Dude, what's it like when that happens? The scoreboard shows the final team scores and you're at the top spot. I mean, you go through a lot of work as a track
Oh yeah.
coach. You go through a lot of heartache as a track coach. Kids that didn't come out and you just knew they were going to be great, or a kid, grade wise flunks. I mean, there's just so much to make this almost like this perfect storm has to happen. And then it happens. What's it like when you finally see that scoreboard and you're at the top?
Oh, it's just pure exhilaration. You're
Hmm.
so excited because you're so exhausted by May. You're so
Sure.
exhausted with everything, and the state meet is just, you're always so stressed out, and you're stressed for them. And it is really remarkable to me that those kids, um, after what everything they've been through all year, is that they can just stand out there and go, or run out there and go do those things. I have a great respect, but when they win it and it's over and everything lined up the way you wanted it to, there's no better feeling.
Hmm. That's amazing. Did you already know at that point Coach Jones was retiring at that year, or
We did. The kids did not
okay.
know, but he had already let us know. The kids did not know.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Did he tell? So no, typically we get all the team together, there's obviously the trophy presentation. Usually there's at the end of the meet, everybody gets together. Did he let them know then, or
No, we didn't want to do it that way. We wanted him to enjoy every second of
yeah.
that. That was all about those girls, and then
Oh,
us as a coaching staff enjoying it. We didn't want any distraction from that. So
yeah.
we didn't. Nothing was said to them until till the following week.
Wow. That's amazing. Had to be some comfort though that, okay, Coach Jones, our leader, is retiring. That sucks. We just want to stay at meet. You automatically, I think even if you were like 50% of your team was seniors, so they're graduating, I think you still automatically, okay, well, what do we got to do it again next year? You always have that. So there's all those
Right.
thoughts. And then a week later, he's retiring. Had to be some comfort that, okay, yes, he's retiring, but Coach Villers is moving into that role. Like we're not, we're keeping the band together here, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was a pretty smooth transition that year. Most of our kids that had run at the state track meet were juniors. And so they were all going to be seniors my first year. And so that year was, it was a pretty good transition. Had a great time with the kids. We had a shot at winning it the next year, because once you win it, you want to win it again. Once you've won it, you just want to keep getting it done. So we had a great shot at it that year, but our best hurdler fell and broke her arm at the regional track meet. So she was in both hurdles and the 4x4. So when you wipe out 3 events, it's pretty tough to go forth. But we had it went very well. Those kids were our best kid. Our best runner was valedictorian of her class.
Wow.
So it was just a really special group. I had as my first year as the head coach.
Wow.
So I'm very grateful to have had those kids that year.
So talk to us about the transition for you, and I'm sure, I know you enough as a leader, as an assistant coach. There were things that you took on, responsibilities that maybe the quote unquote normal assistant coach didn't, but now you become the head coach, and there are certainly responsibilities, whether you want them or not, that become yours. How was that transition? How did it affect your coaching, if at all? Like, did you find yourself able to coach less because of other things you had to do with the head coaching? Did you had to go find an assistant coach, I'm assuming? Talked about that part of the transition, the assistant coach to head coaching position.
So I kept trying to coach the jumpers, and I did continue to coach the jumpers, but I guess me not being able to completely focus on them and, think 2 days out about what they were going to do. That was a change for me. I had to figure out how to get that done and then plan everything else. So it's kind of one of those things you don't know until you know. Now, I had been a head coach before, but not at this level of competition. So you can't mess it up. You got to get it right, because you have lots of eyes on you. And so basically everything I was doing, I needed to do it so that if I had to explain myself, I could explain myself. I'm not going to say anything to kids I shouldn't say. There's just so many things that you really have to think about as a head coach. That you really don't know till you know. Until you're in those shoes, you really don't know what they're dealing with. My first year was very smooth. Like I said, we had a lot of the same kids. The next year we had a big freshman crew come in. And so, anytime you have a big freshman crew that's talented, you want to get it right. And so we spent a lot of time trying to, develop them. They were a talented group coming in. And so the second year was a little bit rougher year, because I had a new set of parents that didn't trust what we were doing. Sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we had some great kids, but that was a big stressor that I had not experienced before, because when I was at Palmer, I was the track guru. No one questioned anything I was doing. Everything we did was fantastic. Thank you, coach, everything you're doing. So that second year at DeSoto was different. And it was pretty hard, honestly. There were about 2 or 3 years there that it was pretty tough, but I just kept my head down, and I'm like, I'm going to learn everything I can learn. There's not going to be anything that I'm not going to know. I'm going to do my best to know everything I can know to help these kids progress. You also have to learn how to, when you're dealing with a parent that is very involved, you have to make sure, though, that you don't think of the kid that way, right? Kids are kids. And so that's a big learning experience. You're still going to do the same things you were going to do no matter what, because sometimes, you can do things a little differently. Sometimes you need that little push to make yourself better. And so I had to learn a lot in those 2 or 3 years to kind of defend what I was doing.
I've had a couple of coaches on here that coached like exceptional, like like, like a 40-foot triple jumper, amazing. Like that's a really, really good athlete. If she jumped 45, that's just a whole, that's another realm, right? In high school. So we had Anna Cockrell's high school coach on here. She was, she is a phenomenal 400 hurdler who, coming out of high school was like, if this kid doesn't make the Olympics, something is wrong. We had Quincy Wilson, the sophomore sensation right now, his coach, Joe Lee, on the podcast as well. And I asked both of them, I was like, and it's interesting because, and this is going to lead to my question with you. When coaches start having success with athletes, other influences start coming in. Some of it is parental. Some of it is just like, oh, my kid is good. See, I've been telling everybody my kid's good, and look, they are good. And so I want to make sure coach is taking care of my daughter. And then, as they continue to rise, you start getting other influences of, coaches talking to those parents or to those athletes of like, hey, if you were in my program, or, hey, are you doing this? Because, a kid of your caliber should be doing X, Y, and Z, and maybe that's not in your program. So I love asking them, Joe and Anna Cockrell's coach this. I was like, so how did you, I'm going to say, you block out the noise. However, to your point, you also have to know, you almost have to filter the noise. So what noise is going to make me a better coach to help that kid? And what is the noise that I just got to, sorry guys, you just got to trust me. If you don't trust me, that's fine anyway, because I'm still the coach. And so we're going to do things. How did you, as your kids started getting better, because you're coaching better and you're the one leading them to this. That's the crazy part to me. And then you start getting questions from parents, outside influencers, other athletes. In today's world, I can go talk to another athlete in a heartbeat on social media. So I know what they're doing for practice. And I come back to you and say, hey, how come we're not doing this? How do you handle, and when you think about other coaches that are listening right now, what advice would you give? You kind of shook your head, yeah, when I said that filtering of outside. What do you think about that aspect? What would be your advice, and how have you handled that?
Definitely have to filter. You can't block it out. You have to, but you also can't take it personally. What I learned, I've had some of the greatest parents. I have some of the greatest parents. But you do have to also realize that there's times where it's not going to matter what you do. You could have done something else. And so sometimes you have those critics that 100% of the time there is something else you could have done better. And so you're just at all times trying to make yourself the best you can be. You're learning everything you can. Find those mentors. Don't respond to anything immediately. You really need to sit back and think about how you will respond. Remember, keep the kid at the center of every decision that you make. It is about the kid, and you cannot take things personally. Now, you can look internally and think, hey, am I really doing what needs to be done here? Am I allowing this noise to get to me and make decisions about a kid that I shouldn't? But as long as you stick to that, you know what you're doing is correct. You feel strongly what you're doing is correct. You're talking to others about it. You're not just making a decision and that's it. I really have always, the coaches that work with me, different assistants over the years, I highly involve them. I don't get them into the drama of things, but I certainly am always bouncing things off of them because sometimes they see things I don't. I think it's really important that you work together as a fluid team of coaches so that you're really seeing things from different aspects, because some coach might see it different. It's like, no, coach, I don't know. That's not how I saw it. This is how I saw it. So I think you really need to keep those coaches where they feel like they can be honest with you and share things with you. I think you need to trust them with their coaching and make sure that you're mentoring them correctly. But you can get lost in it. The important thing is that you keep working and you know that you trust what you're doing is the right thing.
I love your advice about don't respond to anything in the moment. It's that old, sleep on it philosophy. But you're right. We sometimes jump to the wrong conclusion if we respond immediately. Emotion is much easier to be involved if we're responding within the minute versus like, all right, I hear you. My initial reaction is maybe I don't agree with you, but I'm going to take time, whatever that time is for you, right? Hour, a day, a week, and then process it. Now you bring logic into your response with a little bit of emotion still, instead of a majority of emotion. So I love that advice. I think that's really good advice. The other piece of advice you had there is don't take it personal. And that is certainly one of those things that is easier to say than to do. There's a real fine line between confidence and cocky. And I think the best coaches that I've seen are just under that line. They're confident. They certainly are not lacking confidence. They have confidence in the program and the situation they brought into. And ego is not bad, but bad ego is bad. How do you have that confidence of what you're doing? I'm just going to use this. I don't even know her name, and it's not her. I'm just going to use the example of the event, the 40-foot triple jump. You've taken this kid from never jumped to 40. Bravo. That is really good coaching. So you have confidence that, hey, what I'm doing is working. And then if you start getting outside influence of like, well, maybe if you did this, she'd be 41 or 42 or whatever, yada, yada. How do you not take it personal of like, back off? Look what I didn't take her to 32. I took her to 40, for crying out loud. I know what I'm doing. Just like sit down and trust me. What's your best advice to not take it personal?
So one particular example that comes to mind on this, that really no matter what you do, someone's gonna somewhat criticize what you're doing.
Sure.
I had a really good long jumper. She was always did very well at the state track meet, if not won it. And we were out at a meet. I won't say where we were, but we were at a college meet, and she was jumping big that day. And then she came down and she ended up jumping like 1911, which was the farthest that she had ever jumped. It was a big time. We were all thrilled, like just jumping up and down, happy. I think she was a junior when she did that.
Wow.
And the college coach came over there and said, if she had just done this, she would have hit 20 feet. And I get it if you're talking to a professional, but that is a 16-year-old girl that is having the time of her life at that moment. And you should not rob children of that. You just shouldn't. And so she came over to me and she's like, oh, if I'd have done this, I said, sweetie.
Wait. That coach said it in front of the athlete?
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, because she was over there talking to me. It's like, oh,
I just had this vision of like separate to the coach, which I still wouldn't have agreed with. I'm with you. But to say in front of the athlete,
sure
no.
Yes. So, and he didn't mean any harm.
Agreed.
He was literally just, trying to tweak this one little thing that would have gotten her over 20 feet. But I think we need to be real careful with those developing athletes. Even if they're fantastic athletes, you still need to let them enjoy an achievement. They should not at that exact second be thinking about what they did wrong or what they could change. Let them enjoy that achievement.
I'm reminded of, I heard it through Brooks Johnson when he was on the podcast, and he was quoting George Williams, who I eventually also had on the podcast, George Williams of St. Augustine's fame. And, the quote is that George, kind of made famous in the track world, and it needs to continue to be made more famous, is if you're not in the huddle, you don't know the play. And what he's talking about is when we look at other athletes, when we look at this long jumper and automatically go, oh, if she would just fill in the blank. And it's like, oh, you have no idea about that kid. They have no idea if that kid was just coming off injury, if that kid, this is a female, a boyfriend just broke up with her, her parents got set there, everything that could and is going on. You have no idea. Don't make judgment. And Carl Lewis recently had a great quote, kind of in that same token of, internet coaches, because that's the same thing. You're not in the huddle, you don't know the play of, his kid, Louis, I think is right, Louis Hinchcliffe. And, if Carl would just fix his start. And he's like, guys, he just won the national title. I think I know what I'm doing. Like, we're good here. I don't need your comments there. And then just recently, literally this morning, I'm about 10, 15 minutes into Justin Gatlin's podcast, Ready, Set, Go. It's a great podcast, by the way. If you love this podcast, you'll love Jay's podcast. They do a great job over there. And he's got Wallace Spearman on, who I love him. He's great. And Wallace was known for air quotes here, being slow in his first 100 of his 200 and then bringing it in for the final 200. And he was talking about how people used to go, man, why don't you just run faster? And he was like, dude, first of all, I got a PR of like, 9, 9, 10, 10, 10, 1 or whatever. These guys are 9, 8 kids. It ain't just as easy as like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing inside of my ability. Like, you have no idea what's going on. So I just always go back to that. If you're not in the huddle, you don't know the play. It helped me when Brooks was explaining it to me. And then when I heard it straight from the man, George, it really helped me, not just with track and, watching a kid run going, oh man, if they would just do this, it helped me with life. Like literally,
Right.
like, honestly, when I heard it from George, like a week later, it was really weird how the timing worked out. Someone cut me off in traffic or something like that. And, normally I'd be like, you jerk or whatever. And I literally stopped and was like, oh, I actually have no idea about that person that just cut me off. They could be, a relationship could have just broke up, could have just been released from their job. So something, I have no idea. And by the way, he only cut me off. No one got hurt here. What are we really
Right.
upset about? Let's move on. There's way bigger things that are going to happen to me that day, unfortunately. So I'm just reminded of that when you tell that story. And I never want to shame, judge another person, but to say that in front of the kid, I literally, as you're telling, I'm kind of watching the movie in my head, and I'm like, oh, he's talking to you when he says it, and I'm like, hey, you shouldn't have done it. But in front of the kid, that's
Yeah.
what's the what do the cool kids say? Cringe. That's a little cringe. Don't say it in front
Right.
of the kid. And again, I agree with you though. I do think my heart tells me that person, that coach, was saying it in all good intent. I
He
really
was.
do. I also believe that 100%. And which means we make mistakes, and which means we get to forgive people and we move on. So, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay. So talk to me as you're transitioning to head coach and you're talking about all the, I love this, new, again, I'm kind of a visual person, this visualization that we're kind of coming up together here. You're coming up here, June, about filtering the noise, if you will, instead of just, normally we talk about blocking the noise. I love your idea of like, hey, there are some, like, always be evaluating yourself. So there's things to listen to. Don't take it personal. Don't change everything just because one person says one thing, but always be guarded of what's coming in, but some things have to come in. I love that vision. How do you transition? Because it's one thing, we're talking about this, you personally as the coach, now you become the head coach. So not only are you responsible for the athletes, you're responsible, and you started touching on this a little bit, of your assistant coaches. How do you put that into action with your assistant coaches? You've coached many, if not all of the events in some form or fashion at this point. How do you help an assistant coach continue to become better? How do you, I'm going to say, correct them when you see them doing something that's not within your morals or ethics or coaching philosophy? How do you now, because you're responsible for them, how do you handle that side of head coaching?
I think I keep them very involved. We meet kind of unofficially every day after practice. We come together when practice is over and we talk about, if there was something we need to address tomorrow or do better, or, or gives everybody a chance to say if there was something really good that
Like,
went
like,
on.
like a little huddle or one-on-one
Yeah,
ish?
kinda like a huddle, kinda like a
Yeah.
little huddle
A-
after practice is over. We come over, we meet all
Yeah.
together as the kids, you're still waiting on kids to get picked up and
Right.
all those things. So you know, we all do. The throw coach, the jump coach, the high jump coach, the hurdle, we all over there together.
Did you learn this
Um,
from someone, or was this your kind of idea? Where did you learn that from?
um I would say I I kind of think of our little coaching staff as kind of family,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So I'm kind of hanging out with my family
yeah,
when
yeah.
practice is over, and so we try to kind of keep that feel. Um,
That's
any
cool.
issues they're having, they can share, and I always try my best to take on any negative issues. As far as discipline, or if I need to talk with a parent that something's going on that we need to let that parent know. I try to deal with all that as much as possible and keep that off of them. But me being them allowing to be able to tell me what's going on, a lot of times we can address those things quickly with the athlete where it never gets that far.
Mm.
Or, we can do something special at the end of the week for a few kids and, talk about how they improved here, even if they're not our best athletes on the team. Um, that gives us a chance to do all those things. My coaches very much know that they can give whatever input they want to give, but they do know also that I do make the final decision.
Mhm.
We'll talk it out and we'll go back and forth, and they can even come back to me again if they're, think something else we should do something differently. Um, but I also think because I am responsible for the final decision, that gives them, I think they have less stress.
Mhm.
So ultimately, it's she's going to take care of that for us. That allows me to just coach and not worry about all that stuff. But I think we function very well. They look out for me, and I look out for them, and we really do have a great time together.
I love this idea of this end of practice huddle thing. Like, one of the struggles we do have with the team aspect of track and field is that throwers inherently are over here doing their thing. Distance runners are, I'm gonna say, on the roads doing their thing. Jumpers are in the pit. It's very, it's almost part of our sport that we have to be in these individual silos on a facility and even outside the facility. So to bring the staff together daily, I'm sure some of them are very short, and I'm sure there's some that are maybe a little
Oh,
bit
sure.
longer. But it helps bring that if that staff can be together, it'll help bring the team together. So I really like that idea. I think that's something someone is listening that's going to take away from that and start implementing that. That's really cool. I love that. As the head coach, you talked about the role of mentors throughout your whole life and whole career. I love that. Was there anyone when you became the head coach? And again, you nailed it when you talk about you don't know until you're in that seat. You can try to be as prepared as possible, but until you're the head coach, you just don't ever see it all or know the pressures or responsibilities that you have. Was there any head coach that you called for advice, whether it was the old basketball coach that taught, time management, things like that? Was there another sport head coach, another track head coach? Was there anybody that you're like, hey, all right, so it's official. I'm taking over. What is my blind side? What am I missing? What's going to be the thing that rocks me that I need to start being prepared for now? Or even today that you call and just like, hey, I've got this situation I've never had. Can you help me out? Is
Yeah.
anybody that you've reached out there?
Well, I've always had the connection with Coach Jones. I could always call him anytime I needed to. But in the moment and while I was there, our head boys track coach was Mark Brady. Anybody who knows Mark Brady just loves Mark Brady. He is the greatest. And he had been, I'm not sure how many years he'd already been the head coach there, but he actually was a coach when I went to school there. And so I'd kind of known him a long time. And he ended up actually doing cross country with me. And so I got to know him really well. He stopped coaching football and he started coaching cross country. And I got a chance to work with our head boys coach daily. And I, I hope that every program that the girls and the boys coach works well together because it is just the best situation for the coaches and the kids. Um, but the boys had already been very successful for a long time. Our boys track club our boys track team at DeSoto. Um, and so he'd been in the limelight a lot, and he had taken kids, and they'd, you know, been on the podium and for different events at the state track meet. So, and he had done it for a long time. So the advice I was able to get from him, um, I just, he was always there. I could always go to him daily if I needed to and ask advice. He had a great time coaching. A lot of times people are really intense, and he could be intense. He could be intense when needed, but he had a kind of a very laid back coaching style, and the kids would run through a wall for him.
Mhm.
So getting him to seeing him coach in that style um, allowed me to realize I don't have to be a jerk all the time.
Mhm.
I don't have to be stressed out, and I don't have to have this, stern all the time as a head coach.
Mhm.
Um, and so I kind of learned that from him. It's okay to have a great time while you're coaching. And if
And,
you're not having a great time, you're not doing it right.
and don't you have more fun that way?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, when we
Absolutely.
think about our professions, whether it's teaching or, what I do here at Gill or attorneys or whatever, if you're just smiling and having fun more, it's just a more enjoyable job at that. I mean, why do we have to be so, I don't know how to describe it, but
Stoic.
stoic. Yeah. Like, oh, everything's so serious. And, maybe if you're a brain surgeon, everything needs to be serious. I mean, I want my brain surgeon to take things seriously, but at the end of the day, especially for us people that are in sports, at the end of the day, I know sports is our life. It's brought you to where you are. Obviously, for me, sports is instrumental to me and my family, things like that. But at the end of the day, it is still just sport. There are a lot more serious things going on in this world than sports. Let's have some fun with it, for crying out loud. What kid ever gets into a sport so they can be yelled at and by the book and never right, never can do anything right, things like that? It's like, nah, I got into sport because I loved it. I wanted to be around teammates. I wanted to run. I wanted to throw. I wanted to jump. Whatever. Well, then we should mentor that. We should foster that. I love that. I love that. All right, as we start working towards transition to DeSoto, because next is after DeSoto's Waxahachie, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've been here 2 years now.
Where does, I know you have done some leadership roles inside of TTFCA. Where does that side start for you? I'm gonna call it beyond just coaching at the school you're at. Where does the thought of like, oh, I could help other coaches, through my leadership? Where does that start for you? And what are some different things that you've done and are doing?
So I'm very involved in the TTFCA, vice president of that group, and like you said, you did that podcast with Stuart Cantor.
Mm.
He is just an amazing person. He's done so much for track and field in Texas the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and the clinic that he puts on. It's just so good for young coaches. I really advise coaches any chance you can get to a clinic
100%.
and don't just go shopping. Go to
Sure, I agree. I agree.
the sessions. Go to the sessions. Every session has something to give. Network with those coaches. Sometimes you learn the most after it's over, and y'all go have dinner together
Yeah.
somewhere, and you just get to talk for real about what works and doesn't work.
Yep.
Those are the best times as far as just kind of getting to know others and letting them see that even when you're at your best, you're still making some mistakes at times. There's still some things you would go back and do differently, and you hopefully you can share some enough insight that they can do well on their part. But when I got here, actually Vince Anderson came like in October that first year I was here and did a session for us, a 2-day session,
At
and
DeSoto.
so at Waxahachie.
Oh, Waxahachie. Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Yeah, Waxahachie last year.
Very cool.
And so he did a great job. And so it kind of, because a lot of people don't know where Waxahachie is, they haven't heard of it. And so it kind of helped some of the coaches come down here and see what we have going on. And we had a great time with that. Waxahachie, I love it here. It's very much, when I got here, they took you in, your family. It's almost like I'm back at Palmer. I share an office with the softball coach and basketball coach, the volleyball coach, the soccer coach. The tennis coach. We're all in here together. Which at DeSoto, all the track coaches were in an office together. And so to get that old feeling back where you're getting to know the other coaches and you're kind of all functioning as a team for the campus, it's a great feeling.
Mm-hmm. And so you talk about you had that feeling of family, and that term is thrown around a lot because family. And I'm stuttering here a little bit. I'm going to say family is your family, your blood. However, and anybody knows my story, that is not true for me. But where I'm really getting at is you came from DeSoto, which would be closer to saying the whole family thing because that's where you came from. So why? What was the impetus for transition from DeSoto to Waxahachie?
I think after COVID, you kind of see things a little bit differently. I had a loss in my life, and I wanted to be able to spend a lot more time with my kids. And there were just some changes I needed to make to be, I guess, really to be a happier person.
Mm-hmm.
The kids at DeSoto were amazing. I mean, I had some incredible kids that I would have taken home with me any day of the week to come live with me. I had the best kids. I had great parents. all of it. I wanted to be able to be with my own children more.
Mhm.
And so my husband and I, we decided we wanted to move down here and get a place, maybe a little more. We're both kind of, you can hear it, I'm sure, in my voice, a little bit of country there. So we were trying to get out away from the city a little more. And this position came open, and Greg Reed, the former athletic director here, called me and asked me if I would come. The coach that was here long term, Dana Scott, did a wonderful job with the program. She was retiring, and he kind of courted me and got me to come down here. And it's been a really great place to be. The kids here are amazing, and we're getting better and better every day.
Awesome. Well, I'm certainly sorry for your loss. I do love your intentionality though about your children and family and things like that. It's easy for us in sports to, um, I've explored this before years ago now on the podcast and even on, different forums on Facebook and stuff like that. Selfless versus selfish, and we initially kind of tend to think of it as like a light switch, like, oh, we're either always all the way selfish or all the way selfless. And we put coaches in the always selfless bucket. Like, you do so much, you talk about your own kids, or you're doing that for other people's kids as well. And so we're all the way selfless. Well, that is also not right, being 100% selfless, because that sometimes puts our own families and children in this, maybe in this example, I'm not saying specifically for you here, June, but in general, the real thing is almost like a slider button. You really need to be almost like 50%, 49, 51 type percent of selfless and selfish. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not able to take care of on the coaching side. If you're, someone who's always at work, coaching 24/7, recruiting 24/7, teaching 24/7. Well, it looks like you're being selfless, but actually you're being selfish because you're taking away time from spouses and children and things like that. So I'm glad to hear and love that for you, that you're here, you making decisions of like, hey, families first. I love track. I'm putting words in your mouth here a little bit here. I love track, love teaching, love the career that I've had. But at the end of the day, number one is my family. Like that has to, if that's not grounded, if that's not taken care of, all this other stuff does start to crumble eventually. So I'm glad you made those decisions, and you and your husband were committed to doing that, because sometimes that can be hard, because it is change. You said you were at DeSoto for what, 15 years, 20 years, 20 years.
20. Mhm.
Change is hard. That's hard to say, okay, now at this point, I'm going to go, not necessarily start over. You're not starting a new program or anything, but you are starting a new community, a new house, a new neighborhood, new kids, new staff, new coworkers. So I do appreciate hearing that. And again, appreciate your authenticity with sharing that. I appreciate that. Okay. So for the last time we have here, I always love when I have my high school coaches here on the podcast, especially our ones that are producing collegiate type athletes. So kids that are going to go on to NCAA schools or NEIA or junior college coaches, because the landscape of track recruiting is changing. We've been on here for about an hour and a half. It's changed in the last hour and a half that we've been recording
Right.
this. What have you seen? And you take it where you want to take it, but where have you seen things change for college recruiting as it relates to college coaches and your role as a high school coach? Do you see it changing for good, and what has been the good things that have changed, or have you seen it changing for the bad, and what are some of the bad things maybe you've seen? Where do you sit on the recruiting aspect?
Well, I think obviously the portal has changed everything for us tremendously, I believe. I think we really have to, we were so used to talking about what we call the t-shirt schools all the time,
I love that.
because, there's really only 7 universities in all the state of Texas, right? I mean,
Wait.
you can name about 7 of them,
I
then
was
you
gonna say, can
start
I
having
name
fingers,
7? That's what I was trying to think. Can I name 7? Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So, and we're guilty of it. And so certainly the
Certainly.
kids and a lot of times the parents don't know either that there's so many opportunities out there. But I do believe that, obviously the portal has taken those t-shirt school opportunities almost completely away, unless you're winning the state track meet, or
Mhm.
you're placing the top 3 and have had an incredible event,
Mhm.
at the state track meet. Um, you're not going to get recruited by those anymore. They're going to go find people who are already pointing at the collegiate level and recruit them, and you can't blame them because
Right.
that's how they change the system.
Right.
But I do think our kids, we still kind of think, and the coaches too, are still kind of thinking, well, this kid's doing this, then you know they should be recruited by this big, huge Division I school, and I can't believe they're not looking at them. Well, they're looking at everybody in the portal first. You're low man. But so to get the information out to our kids about all the different opportunities, all the different schools there are out there, how the rules work, Division I versus Division II, and all of those things. We meet with our kids and we go through those different opportunities. These are all Division I, these are all Division II. Here are their recruiting times, because those, you can go to any track and field website, college website, and you can find their recruiting times. They're out there. And sometimes that's an eye opener for kids. And you can use it as a positive tool. All right, this is where you are. If this is somewhere you want to go, this is where you have to be. So you have to do the work to get here. What you're doing right now is not, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So we try to use it as a positive thing so that they will work harder and perfect what they're doing. Maybe they'll fix their nutrition. Maybe they'll sleep better, if that's something they really want to do. But certainly recruiting has changed quite a bit. Now, there for a long time, didn't really hear from college coaches that much when they were recruiting. It seemed like there were like 7 or 8 years there before COVID that you didn't hear from them a lot. Like they didn't call and ask you about the athlete. But what I have noticed now, probably the last 5 years, is that we do get more phone calls from the college coaches lately. So how are their grades really? How are they at practice every day? They're wanting to know a little bit more information than they were at one time. And I don't know if that's because a lot of times there's smaller schools calling you now, and so they have to create a more positive environment when those kids get there, so they'll stay. So they're trying to recruit more positive kids, if that makes sense. So I think that is a positive. The negative is that the t-shirt schools are harder and harder to get recruited by. But the positive is I think that those college coaches are wanting to get to know the kids better before they get them.
It's interesting. You and I are a lot aligned in what I think is the reasoning between. I love I don't think I'm sure I've heard it before, but the t-shirt school. I love that. I love that the name of that. That's awesome. I think about, my last coaching spot was at Mississippi State, so in the SEC. And the SEC was a bloodbath back then, but that was before even Texas A&M and Missouri was in it. So what I hear sometimes from high school coaches is, I'm going to keep using this term, these t-shirt schools, they don't want to develop kids anymore. And I just use the SEC as a kind of a thought example. We had 12 teams. 12 teams when I was there. And we certainly had walk-ons and book kids that were, still really good kids out of high school. They just had to be. And we would develop them and hopefully make them all SEC and nationals and things like that. And then Texas A&M and Missouri joined. And it's like, well, that makes it harder for a kid to develop and become a point scorer. And now you add Texas and Oklahoma to it. And it's like how could you, like a walk-on kid, without that walk-on kid being really a full ride somewhere, we just don't. I don't want to say we don't have time. I'm not speaking for my other SEC coaches, but it makes it harder with the more teams on there. So that's one. And two, I just want to dispel this myth of like these coaches, these t-shirt school coaches aren't developing kids. When we think of that word development, we think of like an example of a 10-9 kid becomes a 10-3 kid. That's development. That's an amazing job. That's super hard. We tend to forget, because I hear this a lot. They just get the fastest kids and throw them on the track. It's like, if I get a 10-10 kid out of high school, first of all, back when I was coaching, there were almost none. Now it seems like kids are running sub 10 in high school. That's nutsos, but whatever. Taking a kid from 10-10 to say, what would Hinchcliffe run, 995? So let's say 10-10 to 995. That's development. And by the way, that's super hard. 10-10 to 995, that is hard. Just like 10-9 to 10-3 is hard. So when you talk about the portal and how much easier, because kids were transferring back in the day. I don't know why we just think this portal is the first time kids were transferring. It may be easier, or at least more secure for the kid. They don't have to go talk to the coach anymore, which that was kind of an unfair thing, really, to be real frank with you. But so I get that. What I disagree about the portal, and I didn't hear you say this, is because you specifically said about t-shirt schools. I love that you made that distinction, because I hear, oh, it's impossible, it's super hard for any kids to get recruited to Division I. And I'm like, well, why? And they're like, oh, well, the portal, that's taking up all the scholarships. I'm like, okay, but that means those kids are coming from somewhere. And
Right.
if the t-shirt school wanted them, that means they're pretty good, which that means I can assume they were on scholarship at the non-t-shirt school. So if that kid leaves and goes, that means that scholarship's open. So maybe, and I thought you nailed it for me here, June, maybe the opportunities to go to those t-shirt schools are getting slimmer for high schoolers, but the opportunity to still go run is still there. They're still, using Texas Sam Houston's, Wayland Baptist, UIW. There's still lots of opportunity. In fact, there's more programs today than there were yesterday, by the way. We've kind of got past the shrinking of programs, thank goodness, even though it still happens. So I love that aspect of it. Now, what I'm really curious to dive into is, because I hear this is another topic about recruiting. You're seeing that more coaches, because when you said more coaches are calling, you meant you, the coach, not necessarily.
Yes.
Yeah. Now that's interesting, because there is that debate of, should a college coach call the high school coach or not? And I try to stay neutral on this one, but I think I'm on the side of no, because that's what I used to not call the high school coach, right or wrong, maybe wrong. I just didn't, because I'm like, I just always thought, it's like, what are you going to tell me, June? And what I mean by that is, you're not going to tell me they're a bad person. You're not going to tell me I already know what their grades are. You might be able to tell me, like, hey, just let you know, yeah, sometimes they miss out on practice. I don't know if you're honestly going to tell me that or not. I don't know. Maybe you are. But even then, I have a hard time, because I have a hard time with this internet, social media machoism from coaches. Even if I'm calling you about a kid, that means I'm interested. That means I think they can be well on my team. Even if you tell me, yeah, they miss practice, am I really going to stop recruiting that kid?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I really don't. Here's the social media machoism I hear from coaches. A kid, put a bad word on social media or whatever, So I stopped recruiting them. Really? Because every kid that is awesome, all sports, football, baseball, basketball, etc., as long as they have the grades, they all seem to still land in college.
They do.
Even bad ones. Didn't Allen Iverson start a fight in a bowling alley, threw a chair at a kid? And Georgetown didn't go, you know what? That's just a bad kid. We're not going to sign him. Bull crap. The guy was awesome. They're going to sign him. I just don't know what's a high school coach going to tell me. Now, you tell me what is the value there, though? Because some coaches do take that very oh yeah, I'm definitely calling the high school coach. Tell me what does a high school coach bring value to the recruiting aspect?
I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sure why the change has been. I just noticed with the smaller schools, you're more likely to get that call. I think it's because for them to keep their kids there, they have to have a very positive experience once they get
Yeah, I
there.
love that.
That's my take on it.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to do, because they have a bigger pool to pull from now than they used to.
Right?
They've got better kids they can recruit. So
Exactly.
right. Now they might lose them in a year or two, but
That
they've
is
got
also
a bigger
correct.
pool to pull from.
That's correct.
So, maybe they're trying to make sure that who they get in there is serious and creates a positive environment for them once they're there. Because I think that is one of the biggest reasons kids get to college and then they realize it's a job, which it is. It's a job in college. And they really a lot of times lose that team atmosphere in college and the camaraderie because it is so competitive. And I think maybe those smaller programs got to work more to create that better environment than the bigger programs do.
I definitely think there is benefit, not just small program, even the t-shirt programs, because kids transfer amongst those schools as well. I wish we could, and it's hard because it's the same in the professional world when you go to interview at jobs and you interview people. I wish we could just scrape off the veneer of BS that just happens. Meaning when someone, when I interview people here, it's just inherently of like, oh, what is Mike looking for? What's the kind of person I'm supposed to be here at the interview that he'll hire me? And it's like, bro, I just want you to be yourself, because if that works and that jives with me and you get hired here, things are going to be awesome. And if it doesn't, if who you are doesn't jive and you don't get the job, thank goodness for not only me, obviously, but for you. You wouldn't have wanted to work here. So in the recruiting aspect, I was thinking about this today, just kind of haphazardly, because now they have unlimited visits, I think, right? So it used to be 5, now kids can go everywhere, anytime. I started thinking, it's like, because this veneer of, one of your t-shirt schools in Texas is taking a little bit of a hit right now, NIL and the, what was it, the Camaros that the football recruit walked by at Texas and all this kind of stuff. I wish they would take away all of that, because that's not reality. The lobster dinner during your recruiting visit, you ain't eating lobster when you're on the team. I'm sorry, maybe once a year for a celebration, I don't know, but you're not. That's not real life. So I wish, like, maybe recruiting visits should be a 24-hour window. And I know that's tough because of travels and things like that, but maybe you should only be on campus for 24 hours. Don't do this, make it Disney World for 3 days, and then when you get there, it's actually a parking lot.
Right.
I just think if we strip that down, and if we as coaches strip down and be like, hey, here's who I am. You are gonna like me or not like me, and make that choice. Because if you like me and you think I'm the coach for you and you actually choose to go to school here, I think the likelihood of you staying for 4 years goes up, versus I get to campus and I'm like, wait a minute, coach was cool when I was here for a visit, and now this is how he or she really coaches. That's not how I want to be coached. And now you look to transfer. I wish that we could just wipe that veneer off of take the shiny side off, and let's get to the real, and make choices on schools for both. This is for both high school and college, the mix there. High schoolers, man, go find someone that during your visit talks to you for real and doesn't show you the shiny coin, because the shiny coin's not real every day. And that's not real life. It's not real life. So I love your perspective on it. I love it because it lines up with what I think, June. So it's always nice. All right, June, we're near the end of our time. First of all, so grateful. I'm always so thankful for your time. That's one of the most important things that you can give me. To wrap us up, as you are, is 2025, because we're in summer, is 2025 going to be year 3 or year 2?
It'll be year 3.
Year 3. So what's got you excited as you're looking into 2025? And I know you're always a year and 2 ahead. You're looking at 26, 27. You already know what freshmen are coming in, things like that. What's got you excited about the Waxahachie Indians? Because I know that mascot now.
There you go. Yeah. So the first year I got here, it was like off season was survival. The third week of school, I was like, all right, we've worked them decently. Let's go do something fun Friday. I was like, all right, everybody's going to bring their spikes. We're going to go do blocks on Friday. And they all kind of looked at me crazy. And I was like, okay, how many of you have spikes? And only 2 of them had their own spikes. So that was a culture shock for me, for sure. So the first year was getting them just total survival. Okay, let's just keep them off from having to throw up in the trash can. All right. So, but then this last year, the off season was a lot better, and we ended up having a lot more success in the spring. And the kids kind of made a turn during the season. Our best kid we have, she decided this last year she didn't want to run farther than 100. Really, she'd run the 100 and the 200, But then this year she said she was going to work towards breaking the 400-meter record. So you've really made a turn when that child has changed her mindset from being a 100, 200 runner to going to break the school record, and she did. She did. She worked hard all year. She broke the 400-meter record. She broke 4 records. She broke the 1, 2, the 4, and the 4. She was on the 4x4. And so all the girls being able to see that happen and watch that development, they all developed. They all got better. But for them to see her mindset change and have that much success just by her work ethic changing, I'm very excited about the off season and what we'll produce once that off season is over.
Yeah, you've got to install your culture. They had some culture there. You're a longtime coach, but
Yeah.
you had to put in your culture, and that takes time. Building
Yes.
culture is hard. Ruining culture is very easy, by the way, but growing culture is hard. So it's cool to see you putting in that culture, and it's going to be so cool to see what fruit bears this year in 26, 27,
Mhm.
because you're a program builder, and so it's going to be really cool to see that. Will I see you next month? Will you be down at Texas THSCA down in San Antonio?
I'm actually not gonna I'm always there, but I won't be there this year. My
Um,
sister's getting married in Spain,
oh my
and so
gosh. Wow,
yes,
very cool. Okay, well
yes, so I've never been over that way, so I'm gonna
that's
get to experience that.
that's an
Yeah.
acceptable excuse. We'll allow
Yeah,
that. But maybe you see at USTFCA, and definitely you'll see you at TTFCA in
for sure.
January down in Waco. We'll have a lot of fun down there. So June, thank you so much. Again, most valuable thing you can give me is your time. So grateful. Even though it's summer, right? All teachers have summer off, I think is the myth out there. It's just
So
it's
they
vacation
say.
land. Yeah, it's vacation land. Exactly. By the way, if you're not watching YouTube, she's in school, so it ain't just
Yeah.
vacation. We just have 3 months off thing. Trust me, I know that one very much. So appreciate you very much, and grateful for you being here today. Appreciate you guys being here and listening. Man, thank you. We've had a couple, right? 2 weeks ago, we had Emily Webb, the high school coach down in Niceville, Florida. I really do enjoy these high school coaches. They bring a different perspective from our college coaches. And I think it's really important. One of our missions is to help, connect. There's a reason why the podcast is called Connection. So it's really good, I think, for if you're a college coach listening, to see what a high school coach goes through, thinks about the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of that. And I think it's important if you're a high school coach to hear our college coaches, because I think I'm starting to get more and more passionate about this recruiting thing. Partly because I was a big recruiter. I do love the recruiting, but I think I'm getting more passionate about how do we bridge that gap of communication between our high school coaches and our college coaches. And of course, you have that X factor that throws in there, and club coaches as well. And we've had a few club coaches as well. So I love exploring that. So join us next week. We'll do it all over again. Have another awesome coach here. Appreciate you guys being here, and have an awesome summer if you're watching the Olympic trials and stuff. We'll talk to you soon. See you guys.